Hi, Jake here. I am pleased to be narrating for Polly's PE Notes on the skeletal system. Today we will look at functions of the skeletal system, the vertebral column, cartilage, bones and joints. Let's go. The skeletal system works as a support structure for your body. It gives the body its shape, allows movement, makes blood cells, provides protection for organs and stores minerals. Some students confuse the vertebral column and the spinal cord. The vertebral column surrounds the spinal cord which travels within the spinal canal. In order for humans to move and perform sporting activity, the interaction of the skeletal and muscular systems is necessary. Bones are the main storage site of calcium in the body. The axial skeleton consists of 80 bones, while the appendicular skeleton consists of 126 bones. Charming Timmy loves sexy Chantal is a mnemonic used to help students remember the order of the sections in the vertebral column. The vertebral column is also known as the spinal column and is the central axis of the skeleton in all vertebrates. The 12 thoracic vertebrae are numbered T1 to T12. Their main function is to hold the rib cage and protect the heart and lungs. Lumbar strain is considered one of the most common causes of lower back pain. The injury can occur because of overuse, improper use, or trauma. The sacral vertebrae start as separate bones, but start to fuse during adolescence and early adulthood. They form into a single bone by age 30 to complete the fusion process. The coccyx is the smallest bone in the spinal column. The C-shaped curves of the cervical and lumbar spine are called lordosis, while the reverse C-shaped curve of the thoracic spine is called kyphosis. A newborn baby has nearly 300 bones in its body. This is because babies are born with more cartilage in the body that hardens and turns to bone as they grow.
So there are three main types of cartilage found within the body. The first type is called hyaline cartilage. So you can find hyaline cartilage in the larynx and trachea, in the throat portion of the body, and then also in all of the joints where the surfaces of bones are articulating each other. So this is called articular cartilage. And the main purpose of hyaline cartilage is to reduce friction and absorb shock. The second type of cartilage that you will find in the human body is called elastic cartilage. which can be found in the shape of the outer ear and also the epiglottis, which is the structure that protects your airway whenever you are swallowing food. And so the main purpose of elastic cartilage is to provide shape and support. And then finally we have fibrous cartilage. And you can find fibrous cartilage in the intervertebral discs in the spine, and also in an area of the pelvis called the pubic symphysis, which is where the two halves of your pelvic bones come together to form a joint there. And the main purpose of fibrous cartilage is to provide rigidity and to absorb the shock that is transmitted between these joints.
Ossification begins about the third month of fetal life in humans and is completed by late adolescence. Bone density refers to how much calcium and other minerals are present in a section of your bone. Bone density is highest between ages 25 and 35. The long bones of the human leg comprise nearly half of adult height. Short bones contain mostly spongy bone. "22 bones come together like a puzzle to make the cranium." Each vertebra has a hole in the center, so when they stack on top of each other they form a hollow tube that holds and protects the entire spinal cord and its nerve roots. Cracking knees happen when carbon dioxide builds up in the joint's synovial fluid and is released as a gas bubble that bursts when the joint adjusts rapidly. The adult human body contains around 350 joints. In a fetal skull the sutures are wide and allow slight movement during birth, but later they become rigid and fixed just like in the adults. A synovial joint is also known as a diarthrosis.
Synovial joints. There are 6 types of synovial joints. The 6 types of synovial joints are hinge, pivot, ball and socket, ellipsoid, saddle, and plane. Let's go through them one by one. The hinge joint. The hinge is a very simple joint. It allows movement only on one axis. Its structure prevents rotation this way or this way. The head of the bone wraps around the cylindrical head of the other, allowing a very stable rotation this way. The hinge joint allows flexion and extension. That's it. That's all it does, but it does it well. Like the hinges on a door, allow it only to open or close. The best example of it is the elbow. Here's the rotation on a simplified skeleton: flexion and extension. So, if the elbow only allows flexion and extension, how is it that we're able to twist the forearm? Well, let's take a look at the next joint, the pivot joint. The pivot joint also allows rotation at only one axis. However, it rotates along the long axis. A cylindrical bone fits into a ring of bone and ligament, like the radial ulnar joint just below the elbow. The cap on the radius bone fits nicely into this notch on the ulna bone. Ligaments complete the ring, holding the bone in place and allow the radius only to rotate inside of it. The result on the forearm is what we call pronation and supination. During pronation, the base of the radius rotates over and around the head of the ulna. The ulna stays relatively still. Remember, the hinge joint at the elbow prevents the ulna from twisting, so all of that twisting happens at the radius. And by the way, the distal joint of the ulna and radius is also a pivot joint. The combination of the pivot at the top and at the bottom creates that twisting motion for pronation and supination. The ball and socket joint. The ball and socket is the champion of all joints. Hooray for the ball and socket! Its structure is just like how it sounds, a ball inside of a socket. This simple and effective structure allows it to move in all axes: flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, rotation, and circumduction. The 2 ball and socket joints of the body are at the hip and the shoulder. The hip has a deep socket, which gives it stability but limits some range of motion. The shoulder joint has a shallower socket, which gives it greater range of motion, but takes away some stability. Maybe that's why a dislocated shoulder is so common. Ouch. The ellipsoid joint. The ellipsoid joint is very similar to a ball and socket. However, the ligaments and its oval shape prevent rotation. But it still has the ability to rotate on 2 axes, which allows flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, and circumduction. Circumduction is just a combination of all the others in a circular motion. The ball, or oval head, also slides inside the socket. When it rotates along the wider plane, you can see how it pops out too much from the socket. So it slides back into center. A great example of an ellipsoid joint is the wrist, also known as the radial carpal joint. The group of carpal bones rotate inside the socket of the radius. The saddle joint. The saddle joint is similar to the ellipsoid, but the rotation is limited mostly because of the bone structure. The structure of the saddle is very interesting. Both bones have a concave and convex surface. Convex means the surface sticks out like a hill. Concave means the surface curves in, like a hole or a cave. The concave plane of one fits on the convex plane of the other. The legs of the top piece, which wrap around the body of the bottom piece, allow a rotation this way. The body of the top piece can glide inside the legs of the bottom piece. So this unique structure allows the joint to flex, extend, abduct, adduct, circumduct, and very slightly rotate. An example of the saddle joint on the body is the carpometacarpal joint of the thumb. Let's see that baby in action. Finally, the plane joint. Not really as interesting as the others, but deserves our love anyway. It's basically two flat-ish surfaces, one on top of the other. These surfaces can glide or rotate. They usually come in groups, like the carpals of the hand and the tarsals of the foot. Ligaments hold these bones together, but might allow some rotation and gliding. Another plane joint is the Acromioclavicular Joint. That's the one between the clavicle and acromion process of the scapula.
These are the 6 basic types of movement that occur in the body. Please be familiar with them. These are the long-term effects of exercise on the skeletal system. This information is important to every PE student. We have come to the end of the topic. Please thoroughly revise your notes and good luck studying. Goodbye.